The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. It had seen wars end and alliances begin. It had watched empires rise and fall, but on this day it witnessed something that no one could explain. Ambassador Alina Marsh stood at the center of the chamber. She was 63 years old, with silver hair and tired eyes that seemed to carry a weight that no one else could see. Around her, representatives from 47 alien species watched with growing confusion as something strange began to happen. Human delegates were leaving. Not just one or two, but all of them. They rose from their seats quietly, gathered their belongings, and walked toward the exits without saying a single word. Hi. Counselor Rethcon was a tall creature with blue skin and 4 eyes. He had led the council for 200 years and thought he had seen everything. But this was new. This was wrong. Ambassador Marsh, he called out, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. What is the meaning of this? We are in the middle of important discussions. There are trade agreements to sign, disputes to settle. You cannot simply leave. Alina looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was calm but sad, like someone saying goodbye to an old friend for the last time. She did not speak. Instead, she placed her right hand over her heart, then extended it toward the council in a gesture that seemed to mean both thank you and farewell. Then she turned and walked away. The council erupted into chaos. Voices called out in a dozen different languages. Some demanded answers. Others accused the humans of playing political games. But no answers came. The humans simply kept walking until every single one of them was gone. Commander Daniel Hayes watched the scene from the observation gallery above. He was a military man, broad-shouldered and serious. With gray at his temples and scars on his hands from battles fought long ago. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Sandra Cole, stood beside him. Tears were running down her face. 40 years, Sandra whispered. 40 years of working together, building trust, making friends, and we just leave without a word? Without an explanation? Daniel did not look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the empty seats below where the human delegation had sat just minutes ago. There are no words for what is coming, he said quietly. The council would not understand. They would not believe us even if we tried to explain. No, Daniel finally turned to face her. We are not abandoning them. We are trying to save them. They just do not know it yet. Across the galaxy, the same scene was playing out on 100 different worlds. On the trading planet of Nexus Prime, human merchants closed their shops and walked away from fortunes. On the science station orbiting the Villani homeworld, human researchers stopped their experiments and boarded transport ships. On the military outpost at the edge of Kathrani space, human soldiers packed their weapons and left without firing a shot. No explanations, no farewells, just silence and departure. On the farming colony of Haven's Rest, Governor Marcus Webb supervised the evacuation of 14 million people. It was the largest movement of humans in history, and it was happening in complete secrecy. That is the last transport, his aide Catherine Price reported. Everyone is accounted for. The deep shelters on New Terra are ready to receive them. Marcus nodded slowly. He looked out at the empty city that he had spent 20 years building, the gardens he had planted with his own hands, the schools where his children had learned to read, the hospital where his wife had given birth to their youngest daughter. All of it would soon be nothing but memories. The council still does not believe us, Catherine said. I intercepted their latest message. They think we made up the threat to avoid the trade dispute. Let them think what they want, Marcus replied. We tried to warn them. We showed them the data. We gave them every piece of evidence we had. They chose to ignore it. Now all we can do is buy them time they do not even know they need. Back at the council headquarters, an emergency session was called. Counselor Mirax of the Villani Collective was the first to speak. Her species could feel emotions through a kind of mental connection, and she had felt something in Ambassador Marsh that troubled her deeply. They know something, Mirax said. Her voice was soft but carried to every corner of the chamber. I could feel it in the ambassador. Not fear exactly, but something deeper. Acceptance mixed with purpose. like someone who has made peace with their own death. Admiral Growth of the Cathroni Empire made a sound of disgust. He was a warrior, 8 feet tall, with armor-like skin and a temper to match. "Nonsense," he growled. "The humans are throwing a tantrum because they did not get what they wanted in the trade negotiations. They will come crawling back within a month, begging for our partnership. And if they do not?" Mirax asked. "Then good riddance. We do not need them." But the humans did not come back. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Every human colony in Council space sat empty. Every human ship had vanished. Every communication channel was silent. And then the telescopes saw something. Dr. Yanara was a scientist of the Folian species, a being of tentacles and vast intelligence who had devoted her life to studying the universe. She was the first to notice the anomaly at the edge of the galaxy, a patch of space where the stars seemed to be disappearing. At first she thought her instruments were broken. She ran the calculations again and again, hoping to find an error. But the numbers always came out the same. Something was coming. Something so vast that it made the largest Sindari warship look like a grain of sand. Something that was eating the stars themselves, and it was heading straight for them. Yanara rushed to the council chambers with her findings. She showed them the data, the projections, the timeline. She showed them exactly what the humans had been trying to tell them all along. Counselor Vrethkon stared at the images in horror. "How long do we have? If nothing stops it, approximately 20 months before it reaches the outer colonies. After that, it will consume everything. Every world, every species, our entire civilization." "The humans knew," Mirax said softly. "They knew, and they tried to warn us, and we did not listen." "Where are they now?" Vrethkon demanded. "Where did they go?" Yanara pulled up another image, this one showing a massive fleet of human ships gathered at the far edge of the galaxy, directly in the path of the approaching darkness. "They're going to fight it," she said. 3,000 ships against something that devours stars. They are going to die trying to slow it down." The council sat in stunned silence. Admiral Groth, who had dismissed the humans as cowards just months ago, spoke in a voice that was barely a whisper. "Why? Why would they do this?" "They owe us nothing." Mirax closed her eyes, feeling the distant echo of human emotions across the vast emptiness of space. Determination, sacrifice, love for a galaxy that had never truly accepted them. "Because that is who they are," she said. "That is who they have always been." Captain Nathan Brooks had seen many things in his 30 years of service. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belts. He had survived the plague on Colony 7. He had watched his best friend die in his arms during the border wars. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw. Through the viewport of his ship, 3,000 human vessels floated in formation beyond the Orion Nebula. They were everything humanity had. Massive carrier ships that could hold 5,000 people. Fast attack cruisers with weapons that could crack a planet in half. Small fighter craft that darted between the larger ships like fish swimming around whales. And somewhere out there, hidden in the darkness between the stars, something terrible was waiting. "Final count confirmed, Captain," said Patricia Lane, his navigation officer. She was young, only 26, with red hair and freckles that made her look even younger. Her voice was steady, but Nathan could see her hands shaking. "All civilian transports have reached the safe zone. The families are being settled in the deep bunkers on New Terra." "Good," Nathan said. "And the message to the council," sent as ordered. "We gave them everything. The coordinates of the threat, the projected timeline, all our research. Whether they choose to believe it is up to them." Nathan nodded slowly. He looked out at the fleet, at the ships that carried the last hope of humanity. They had been preparing for this moment for 3 years, ever since a deep space probe had first detected the anomaly. 3 years of building ships in secret. 3 years of stockpiling weapons and training soldiers. 3 years of saying goodbye to the lives they had known. It would not be enough. They all knew it would not be enough. But that had never stopped humans before. On the planet Haven's Rest, now empty of all life, the last transport ship lifted off from the spaceport. Marcus Webb watched it go from the window of his office. He had chosen to stay behind, to make sure everyone else got out safely. Catherine Price stood in the doorway. "Governor, we need to go. The last shuttle is waiting. One moment." Marcus picked up a photograph from his desk. It showed his wife and 3 children smiling in the garden of their home. They were safe now, hidden in the bunkers with millions of others. He might never see them again. "Tell me something, Catherine," he said, without turning around. "Do you think we are doing the right thing?" "I think we are doing the only thing we can do," she replied. The council refused to listen. They laughed at our warnings. "If we had?" Katie pulled her brother into a hug, hiding her face in his hair. "He was brave," she whispered. "He was so brave. By the end of the first day, humanity had lost 400 ships and nearly 60,000 lives. The entity's advance had been slowed by approximately 12 hours. 12 hours. That was the price of 60,000 people. Nathan Brooks sat alone in his quarters that night, reading the names of the fallen. Every captain, every crew member, every young volunteer who had given their life for a galaxy that barely knew they existed. Patricia Lane appeared in his doorway. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "Captain, you need to rest. Tomorrow will be worse." "How can tomorrow be worse than today?" "Because today, we still had hope that we might make a difference. Tomorrow, we know exactly how hard this is going to be, and we have to keep fighting anyway." Nathan looked up at her. "Do you ever wonder if it is worth it? All this sacrifice for species that never appreciated us, for a council that ignored our warnings and laughed at our concerns?" Patricia thought about the question for a long moment. "I think about my sister," she finally said. "She is in the bunkers with her children. 3 kids, all under 10. They have their whole lives ahead of them. If we can give them a chance to grow up, to have families of their own, to see things we never got to see, then yes, it is worth it." Nathan nodded slowly. He turned back to the list of names, to the endless record of sacrifice and courage. "Send a message to the council," he said quietly. "Tell them everything we have learned. The frequencies that seem to slow it down, the patterns in its movement, everything. If we do not survive, at least they will have the knowledge to keep fighting." "Yes, Captain." Patricia left him alone with his grief and his duty. Outside the viewport, the darkness waited, patient and hungry, ready to swallow more light when the morning came. And in the silence of his quarters, Nathan Brooks made a promise to the dead. Their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Their courage would not be wasted. Even if humanity fell, the light they carried would burn on in the hearts of those they had died to save. Tomorrow, the battle would continue. Tomorrow, more lives would be lost. But tonight, for just a few hours, Nathan allowed himself to remember the fallen and to honor them with his tears. It was all he could give them now. 3 months had passed since the first battle. 3 months of fighting and dying and learning. 3 months of sending information back to the council while the fleet grew smaller every day, Commander. Kevin Parks stood in the briefing room of the carrier ship Resolute. Surrounded by the surviving officers of what had once been a mighty fleet, they looked tired and old, even the young ones. The kind of tiredness that sleep could not fix. "We have found something," Kevin said, pulling up a holographic display. "After analyzing all the data from our attacks, we have identified a pattern. The entity has a weakness." The room went silent. For 3 months they had been fighting an enemy that seemed impossible to hurt. The idea that it might have a weakness felt almost too good to be true. "Explain," said Lieutenant Maria Santos. She was one of the few pilots who had survived multiple engagements with the darkness. Her hands were scarred from burns, and her left eye had been replaced with a mechanical one. But she was still fighting. Kevin pointed to a series of graphs on the display. When the entity consumes matter, there is a slight delay. Almost impossible to detect, but it is there. During this delay, certain energy frequencies can create a disruption. If we can generate a sustained field of these frequencies at the right location, we might be able to destabilize its entire structure. "You mean we could destroy it?" Maria asked. "Maybe our scientists have designed a new type of weapon. a device that generates the disruption field continuously. But there is a problem with delivery. What kind of problem? Kevin hesitated. The device needs to be placed at the core of the entity. Inside it, everyone in the room understood what that meant. Whoever delivered the weapon would not be coming back. How many ships would it take? Maria asked. Our calculations suggest we need at least 50 ships to create a corridor through the outer layers. 2 ships carrying the device would follow behind. Maybe one of them would make it to the core, and the crew of that ship would be consumed along with the entity. If it works— The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Maria stood up. I will lead the strike team. I have survived this long. Might as well put that luck to good use. Maria, you do not have to. Yes, I do. We all do. That is why we are here. On the council world, things were finally changing. The data that the humans had been sending for 3 months had transformed the scientific understanding of the entity. Species that had fought each other for centuries were now working together, united by the threat of extinction. Counselor Mirax coordinated the research efforts. She had not slept more than a few hours at a time since the battle began. The guilt of not believing the humans weighed on her constantly. The human data has given us a breakthrough, Dr. Yenora reported. We think we can build our own version of the disruption device, but we need more information. We need someone to get close enough to test our theories. The humans are already doing that, Mirax replied. They are sacrificing themselves to gather the data we need. I know. That is why we cannot waste their sacrifice. Every piece of information they send, every life they lose, it has to mean something. The door to the research center opened, and a group of figures walked in. Mirax turned to see who had interrupted them and froze in surprise. Ambassador Elena Marsh stood at the entrance, looking tired but determined. Behind her were a dozen other humans, all of them wearing civilian clothes instead of military uniforms. Ambassador Mirax breathed. We thought all humans had left. Most of us did, Elena replied. But some of us stayed behind. Someone had to be here to help you understand. Someone had to bridge the gap when you were finally ready to listen. You have been hiding here all this time, waiting, hoping that when the moment came, we could do some good. Alina walked forward and looked at the research displays. We have been monitoring your work. You are close to a solution, but you are missing something. Something our scientists discovered but could not transmit before their ships were destroyed. She pulled out a small data device and handed it to Yanara. This contains everything we know. Use it, build the weapon, and then let us help you deliver it. You want to join the strike team? We want to finish what our people started. They gave everything to get you to this point. The least we can do is see it through. The final strike mission was assembled over the following weeks. 50 ships, crewed by volunteers from both the human fleet and the council species. For the first time in history, Sindari pilots flew alongside human captains. Kathrani warriors served under Villani commanders. Old enemies became allies in the face of extinction. Captain Nathan Brooks was among the volunteers. His ship, the Endurance, had survived against all odds, battered and scarred, but still flying. When Admiral Mitchell ordered him to stay behind, he refused. This was always going to be my mission, he told her. From the moment we first detected the anomaly, I knew I would be here at the end. Let me finish it. The strike team launched on a clear morning by Earth time. 50 ships carrying 300 crew members, flying toward a darkness that had already consumed millions of stars. Nathan stood on the bridge of the Endurance, watching as the fleet formed up around him. Patricia Lane was at her station, steady as always. Around them, the surviving crew prepared for what they all knew would be their final flight. All ships. This is Captain Brooks. You all know what we are doing and why. The council species are finally working together. They have the knowledge to build defenses, to prepare for the future. All we have to do is buy them enough time to use it. An alien voice came through the communication channel. Captain Brooks, this is Commander Yelthax of the Sindari. We are honored to fight beside you. We are honored to die beside you, Nathan smiled. The first real smile he had allowed himself in months. The honor is ours, Commander. For what it is worth, you are not bad wingman. The fleet accelerated toward the darkness. Ships began to fall almost immediately, consumed by the void as they pushed deeper into the entity. But the new energy shields held longer than before. The disruption frequencies created pockets of protection that gave them precious extra seconds. 40 ships remained. Then 30. Then 20. "We are almost in range," Patricia reported. Deploying the device in 60 seconds, the last surviving ship spread out, linking their shields together to form a corridor of protection. Through it, 2 Sindari vessels carried the weapon that might save the galaxy. 30 seconds. Another ship fell. Then another. The corridor was collapsing. "Patricia," Nathan said quietly, "it has been an honor serving with you." She looked at him with tears in her eyes but a smile on her face. "The honor was mine, Captain. See you on the other side." 10 seconds. The Endurance shuddered as its shields began to fail. The darkness pressed in from all sides, cold and hungry and absolute. 5 seconds. Payload deployed. Nathan closed his eyes and thought of Earth, of blue skies and green fields, of children laughing and lovers walking hand in hand, of all the beautiful things that made life worth fighting. "Goodbye," he whispered. The device activated, and the universe went white. The council chamber was silent as the holographic display showed what remained of the battlefield. Where the entity had been, where the great darkness had threatened to consume everything, there was now only empty space. Stars that had been hidden for months were visible again, their light reaching out across the void like a message of hope. "Work," Dr. Yanara whispered. Her tentacles trembled as she processed the data coming in from every sensor in the region. The disruption cascade spread through its entire structure. It destabilized completely. "It is gone." High Counselor Vrethkon stood slowly, his 4 eyes fixed on the display. He looked older than he had a year ago, worn down by grief and guilt and the weight of what he had witnessed. "The strike team?" he asked, already knowing the answer. None survived. The final explosion consumed everything within 1,000,000 kilometers. Of the human fleet that fought over the past 3 months, we've confirmed only 400 survivors out of the original 60,000. 400. Out of 60,000. The counselors sat in stunned silence, trying to understand the scale of what humanity had sacrificed. 60,000 lives given freely, for a galaxy that had dismissed them as young and foolish and unimportant. "They knew," Counselor Mirak said finally. Her voice was thick with tears, but she forced herself to speak clearly. From the very beginning, they knew they could not win. They knew most of them would die, and they did it anyway. For us? For species that had ignored them and laughed at them and refused to take them seriously. Admiral Groth, who had once called the human departure a tantrum, rose from his seat. He was a warrior who had fought 100 battles, but his voice shook as he spoke. "I was wrong about them. We were all wrong. They were not the weak, reckless species we believed them to be. They were warriors. They were heroes. They were the best of us. They were the light we did not know we needed," Vrethkon said quietly, "until it was gone." On New Terra, in the deep bunkers where humanity's future had been sheltered for nearly a year, the survivors finally emerged into the light of their new sun. Millions of people, mostly children and their caretakers, walked out of the underground shelters and looked up at a sky they had thought they might never see again. Katie Morgan, now 13 years old, led a group of younger children toward the surface. She had grown up fast in the past year, becoming a leader among the bunker youth, helping to care for the little ones and keep their spirits up during the long months underground. The council sent a message, announced the bunker administrator. A tired man named George Phillips, who had spent the entire crisis making sure everyone had food and water and hope. They want to build a memorial, a monument to humanity's sacrifice that will stand for as long as the galaxy exists. Katie listened to the announcement, but her eyes stayed fixed on the sky. Somewhere out there, among those distant stars, her father had given his life. So had the fathers and mothers of almost every child around her. "We do not need monuments," she said softly. "We need to remember. We need to keep living." That is what they wanted. That is why they fought. George looked at her with surprise and respect. "You are right," he said. but the Council wants to honor them. And perhaps the monument will help others remember, people who were not there, species who will come after us. Katie thought about this for a moment. Then let them build their monument. But tell them to put it out there. She pointed at the stars. Put it where Dad died. Put it where they can all see it, so no one ever forgets. Back in the council chambers, a vote was taken. It was unanimous, the first unanimous decision in 12,000 years of council history. Humanity would receive the highest honor the Galactic community could bestow. The memorial was constructed at the exact coordinates where the Endurance had made its final stand. It was a structure of pure light, generated by technology that would keep it burning for 10,000 years without maintenance. It pulsed with the names of every human who had fallen in the battle, visible from 100 light years in every direction. The inscription was written in every known language. It said, "Here humanity chose to stand. Here they chose to fall. Here they chose us over themselves. May we be worthy of their light?" Ambassador Elena Marsh attended the memorial dedication ceremony. She was the last surviving member of the original diplomatic team that had walked out of the council chamber without a word. So many months ago, "Counselors," she said, standing before the assembled representatives of 47 species, "I speak for the 400 surviving members of our fleet, and for the millions of civilians who sheltered while their families fought and died. We do not want your gratitude. We do not want your monuments, though we accept them with thanks. We want your promise." She paused, looking at each face in turn. Some of them had been allies. Some had been rivals. Some had been enemies. None of that mattered anymore. "Promise us that you will be better," Elena continued. "Promise us that when the next threat comes, and it will come, you will stand together. Promise us that the old divisions and the old hatreds will be put aside. Promise us that our sacrifice was not in vain." High Counselor Vrethkon rose. Around him, every other representative did the same. Warriors and scientists, diplomats and merchants, creatures of 100 different shapes and sizes, all standing together in a show of unity that would have been unthinkable just 1 year ago. "We promise," Ambassador Vrethkon said. His voice carried to every corner of the chamber and through the broadcast systems to every world in the galaxy. "On the memory of your fallen, on the light that guides us still, we promise." Elena nodded slowly. She placed her hand over her heart, just as she had done on the day of the great departure. Then she extended it toward the council. No longer a gesture of farewell, but one of hope. "Then humanity's last gift to the galaxy is not our death," she said. "It is your future. Use it well." She turned and walked away from the podium. But this time, she was not leaving in silence. This time, the council understood. This time, they watched her go with tears in their eyes and gratitude in their hearts. Years later, when Katie Morgan had grown into a woman and had children of her own, she brought them to the memorial. The light still pulsed with names, still called out across the darkness, still reminded the galaxy of what had been lost and what had been saved. "Who was he?" her youngest daughter asked, pointing to one of the names floating in the light. "That was your grandfather," Katie said. "His name was Paul Morgan. He was the captain of a ship called the Dawn Runner. He died so that you could live. Was he scared?" Katie thought about it. She remembered her father's face, the last time she had seen him before he left for the fleet. He had been smiling, but there had been something in his eyes. Not fear exactly, but awareness. He had known what he was going into. He had known he might not come back. "I think he was," Katie said. "But he was brave too. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do what needs to be done, even when you are scared. That is what he taught me. That is what all of them taught us." Her daughter was quiet for a moment, looking at the names floating in the light. Then she squeezed Katie's hand. "I want to be brave like grandfather." Katie smiled through her tears. "You already are, sweetheart. We all are. That is their gift to us." And in the void where Omega had once threatened to consume everything, the memorial continued to shine, a beacon of light that would burn for 10,000 years. A reminder to the galaxy of the species that had chosen silence over words action over debate, sacrifice over survival. The last light of humanity had not faded. It had become eternal.